Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. So, this is just a little bit of a different kind of video. And I told myself that I would try and tell, not my story, because that is kind of just extremely long, but I want to tell a testimony, I suppose. And it's really difficult to do, but I suppose that I should approach this as if I'm telling someone that needs it, I suppose. So, a couple of years ago, was when I got my diagnosis for anorexia nervosa, and that's when I got help. But that's also when I was very, very ill, and I found myself in a ward in a hospital with doctors trying to explain to me how I was busy dying and I was going to die. And that is something out of over a month in hospital that I actually can remember, understanding that and going through a lot of turmoil because of that. And also in my state that I was in pain, I was uncomfortable, I was frustrated, I was also super helpless and in more than one way, and I needed to be walked, and I was bedridden, and the doctors were trying to figure out a way to implement a refeeding process, because, and that is, sometimes it's quite tricky to do because it can be dangerous. So they were trying to figure out a plan, and my liver was saying, bye-bye, I'm gonna go first, or my body was at least eating my liver, if I could say it like that. And this was BC, as in before Christ. And this is a story of my salvation, basically, all the moments around it. So I struggled for many years. In fact, I think that my whole life I struggled. And I don't think it was very, great. Not that I don't have things that I am grateful for in my life. I've had to endure a lot of things that have been extremely difficult. A lot of things, more than this experience, that should have killed me. In fact, when I was very, very young, I attempted to take my own life a few times. And weirdly enough, a couple of years ago, that was due to illness and being stuck in anorexia's grip, and just ways of thinking that were destructive, and parts, I think a certain part of my brain was either over or understimulated. I'm not sure of the technical details, and though I'm very interested in finding out about how the brain works for an anorexic, because I sometimes hear about, well, a lot of the times, people use food and eating analogies all the time, analogies or examples and things. And for a lot of people, they understand it a certain way. And for someone like me, and a lot of other people, it's interesting because I would have to I would understand it, but in the almost like reversed or opposite way, because that would kind of be the only way I could sort of, you know, relate. So I'd like, anyway, I'm interested to know how the brain or mind works on that, because I'd love to be able to help other people. Because I mean, eating disorders are dangerous. It's a huge problem. I'm surprised that it's not included in the whole. Well, I suppose it's a crisis of its own, but it's not really something that's brought to light. And it should be. It should be something that's spoken about. And so is some other heavy things like suicide and sort of the death factor, especially of, you know, which is of the result of certain mental unwellness, let's say. Anyway, so what I want to do, but I'm not going to do, is run down the statistics for anorexia. But what I will do is say that I was dying and I nearly died. And it, long story cut short, I fell into a place where I started like looking up, and I found myself starting to talk to God, because I became concerned for my soul. I had a realization, a really weird realization that, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to hell. I'm going to go to hell. And I became distraught from that. I'd already accepted that I was dying. And something that I'm not going to go into, but I will mention here, is that, and I believe that God did it, or that my brain, I don't know how it works, but I had the white light experience, not once, but twice. After that, I had a realization as to what to do, or what I needed to do. And I can't explain most of it, but anyway, I messaged a friend of mine who I had attended church, a couple of church services with from when I was young, but I was never really connected in any way. I never had a relationship with God. In fact, I suppose for most of the years before this, you know, I had a not so much love, but a kind of, I remember being angry at God. It's funny how people can get angry at God, but it's kind of, in a way, a kind of relationship with God, and it's not the healthiest relationship, but it's like still to God. It's weird. Anyway, so it's like, you know him, you know all of him, and you know, it's like if you know about how you can have, how it's a relationship, then you can, and you learn more about that, you can really sort of improve that relationship, and that will improve your life and all your other relationships. Anyway, so I called a friend. She came and she did the salvation prayer with me, and it was just us in the room. And I didn't quite realize or understand exactly everything that it entailed. I just had the aim of, I want to go to heaven, and I thought that was the way to do it, which is not wrong, but I wanted to be where my mom was. So, and I most certainly didn't want to go to hell, but that was just a belief that I had. I thought that I was going to hell because of everything that I'd done ever in my life that was bad. But I wasn't looking at the good. I wasn't looking at the life aspect. I didn't even realize, that didn't even occur to me. And I found that also interesting. And through the salvation prayer, what I didn't know was that I was making a choice. I was choosing life. And in that moment, when after we did the prayer, and you say it out loud, and I was so desperate that I think that whatever faith was inside me got kind of amplified, and I truly did believe. And quite naturally, I received like grace, like filling me up inside. It's really hard to describe the feeling, but there was a shift inside of me, deep inside. And I remember feeling relief, and the pain that I was experiencing was gone. And I was able to relax after that. And, well, not relax, but I had a peace came over me. It's like that. It's hard to describe. It's really hard to describe. And and like I said, I didn't have the full understanding of everything that it entailed. I most certainly did not anticipate and did not know that what God would do is a miracle after that. It was almost as if He pulled me back and the angel of death walked right past me. And from that moment, it was like I made a commitment to Him to live life with Him. And that sounds weird, I know, and this is by far not easy to speak about. Like, my legs are shaking. And yeah, He's kept me, so He gave me life, and He has kept me breathing until this moment, and hopefully beyond it. And so that has been AC after Christ. And you know, now it's like in every present moment, it's with Christ. And that truly, it is the reason why I'm alive. Otherwise, I would not be. If I didn't do that and had somehow carried on, or I just don't, I would have died. And walking out of that hospital just over a month or so later, after coming in and having to be helped with a nurse on each arm to walk, that's something that was insane as well. And the recovery itself is a journey, and so is life. Life is hard, but it's also beautiful. And this is a lot of the beauty of life was exposed to me after I made that decision. And what I also want to share is that you have faith already given to you. It's inside of you. It's like a seed of potential or something. And it's like when you choose life and you choose to get saved, or you have that art encounter, or it's hard to say an ABC way of like doing it, you know, but through salvation, it can really help activate that seed of potential faith, which it's almost like that unlocks, like faith unlocks, or is the key to grace, and the grace help, you know, assists you to get saved, and that brings new life. And grace is like the place, and faith is like the key to that place. And I think in between that is believing and receiving, which is really hard to do in life, because sometimes we feel like we don't deserve that, or we don't deserve the goodness, and or we believe the lies of the enemy, or that destructive part of ourselves, or we feel more comfortable in the darkness, or even though there is pain there. And I think there's now I'm thinking of a lot of things, but one of the things that I gained was a gratitude. And that is something that I keep having to practice. But an insight that I got was, and I remember the moment when I realized it and kind of got like freaked, not in a bad way, but I was like, whoa, 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 this is truly amazing. Was the to be I was in a place where I was paying attention to my breath, and I had a sense of real gratitude. It was like I think I was reflecting on something whilst I was doing some breathing, and from my deepest core, it was like, I don't know what it was, but it was almost like that action sort of gave me access to the state, I think, or the bit of revelation, or a flow. I don't know, it's got to do with gratitude. And I was able to, in that moment, to be grateful for a single breath. I realized how much is in a single breath. And I was, it was almost like God also showed me different places in my life where that was relevant, where that was apparent. It's like each moment you are breathing, each moment is an opportunity to be grateful for breathing. But it's hard to explain the intensity of that moment. But for me, especially after, and also before I got saved, I didn't want to die. I happened to be in that circumstance, and it takes really hard work and a daily, it's part of every day, to continuing to be on recovery and then in remission, I like to say as well, and walking in life with a normal life. And something that I really don't agree with is when people, and I'll say people, sometimes talk about my anorexia, my this, I have anorexia, I'm this, and it's like, that's not an identity, but it's kind of it's almost like your shadow, but it's such an interesting conversation. I suppose interesting in the way that you can discover things if it's a mature conversation. I think that conversations need to be had, because and certain practices need to be formed, and certain ways and guidance needs to be provided and be out there, resources and more people that have lived on, that have like beat the so-called statistic that was a so-called predictor over their life, that they should also speak up, like, and anyone with a lived experience of that, I suppose, is relevant for them to speak. And it is something that can give hope to other people. And for me, I suppose the reason why I'm sharing this is because I guess I want to say that being on your deathbed, that should not be your ideal. That should not be the place where you find yourself and then suddenly, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in this situation. That's a bit late. But what I will share also is that I'm grateful for that opportunity for me to make a decision to get saved, because otherwise I truly think that I would have died, and I don't know if I would have gone to heaven, but that's something that I can't speak on. But I'm grateful to have been given another chance at life, and something that made me realize a little bit more and be more grateful was because a friend of mine who also had an eating disorder, she and this was just a couple of months later, and she was part of the statistic, and she died, and she was my soulmate. Like, she was my best friend. She was like a sister to me, and that sort of strengthened my willingness to bear my cross, I suppose, every day, to work every day at it. And I miss her dearly. And yeah, I just hope that there's something that in what I say relays something that you need to hear on your heart. And God is good. God is good. And you can talk to Him. You can pray. You can go to church. You can walk to Him again. If you say you walked away, you can turn around and walk to Him. You can say no to the devil and yes to God. You can change your perspective and look at life and look forward in life to something good instead of bad. When you have an outlook which is like on bad, dark stuff, that's when you move backwards. Or you find yourself in a pit. And there, it is by grace and faith and belief and a crazy kind of trust as well. I remember that was a huge component of my experience, but it just happened. I suddenly trusted this God that I'd never really spoken to, and that I didn't really know, but I felt like every human on the face of the earth, including me, I just couldn't trust. It was like a weird kind of faith that I first experienced, that I first got that encounter with God. And yeah, I suppose I started to believe enough to have remembered to reach out to my friend who was able to do that prayer with me. And yeah, bless her heart as well. Anyway, so just, I don't know what the ending of this should be. I suppose I should say to be continued. And choose life. Look up. Reach out. You are loved. Cheers.